Lee Daniels, you directed The United States versus Billie Holiday, about how the singer was hounded by the federal government after she recorded Strange Fruit. Now, Billie Holiday has been depicted on screen before, and you've spoken before about how you were influenced by Lady Sings the Blues in particular in your career. What made you want to tell this particular story about her life?
Because I didn't know it. I didn't understand how this story in history had never been told before. That this, because when you think about what she did with Strange Fruit, and that was about the lynching of Black men and women in the South, and the government trying to stop her from singing that song, and her not caring and singing it anyway. That it is not taught in schools. When you think of civil rights leaders, you think of Martin Luther King, or you think of Malcolm X or Gandhi. You don't really think of, and maybe Rosa Parks, you don't really think of Billie Holiday. You think of a troubled jazz singer who had issues with drugs, that was in and out of jail. And then that was what they wanted us to that's what the government's legacy of her, that's what the government wanted us to think of her. They wanted her legacy to be that. But when I got this script that Susan Laurie Parks wrote based on Johann Hari's book, Chasing the Scream, it blew me away. There's no way I was not going to tell this story about this Black woman.
And, it feels like we're still learning so much about the history of the civil rights movement as it pertains to our government. Like, as we're recording this, like a day or two ago, there was a report detailing that the NYPD might have been involved in Malcolm X's assassination. And of course, now Judas and the Black Messiah is out talking about Fred Hampton's assassination. What do you think about this continued reckoning that we keep having with the United States and race and just how it's treated?
I think it's fascinating. I just think it's fascinating. I think that, I think white people, the government has really, they have taught us, just like they've taught us how, what we should and what we shouldn't be taking in as our history. They tell us what we should and shouldn't like, even down to films. What films we shouldn't like, what music we shouldn't like. It's the government. It's this idea of the white man controlling. It's really crazy. It's and I didn't really understand that until recent. That we are the product of this. You and I are the product of this environment that we're living in, that we are fed media. The media tells us this is the truth. And so we believe it. It's crazy. It's really crazy.
Yeah, and it
it's
feels
just as bad as what Trump does. It's just as bad as what Trump has been doing. Don't pay attention to this. This is not real.
Yeah, it does feel like we are starting to feel a bit of a reckoning in terms of not just our relationship with the government, but also our relationship with media. We are seeing more of these stories, and we're starting to question a little bit more of the things that we see, like of police, like of federal agents. Are they necessarily the heroes of the stories? Do you think things are getting better in that regard too?
I think so. I think we're understanding him for the first time. One of my earliest memories was my dad, who was a cop, who I grew up in Philadelphia, and I don't know whether you know about the MOVE organization, but they were bombed by Rizzo, who was not the mayor at the time, but police commissioner. And my dad was 6'3" cop that he sparred with Muhammad Ali. I'd never seen him cry before. And he came in tears about what he did as a cop to these MOVE kids. And he must have did something really bad, because I'd never seen him that traumatized before. So what the government does to us, even for us to survive, is what they did to my dad, what the police force did to my dad. I think he carried to his grave too.
And to tell the story of Billie Holiday, you've cast Anja Day as Billie Holiday, and is
I
your
did.
first major film role. It's quite a vote of
Yeah.
confidence in her, and of course, she's up to that challenge in this film.
Yeah.
What made you think of her for this role? And you know, I know she was a bit reluctant to kind of tackle such an important role. So, what was working with her like?
We both were reluctant because I was nervous about working with the first time with someone that never acted before. And but I forgot this is what I do. I work really well with first time I work well with all actors, but I work really well with first time actors that just trust me. And there was something she she was real. She was a real one. She understood Billy in her purest form. And she understood what Billy needed to do to get there vocally. And she understood the spirit of Billy and what it was that I wanted to accomplish with Billy, because I wanted to show her not as a victim, but as a three-dimensional, fucked up, but beautiful, flawed, but spiritual individual. And she represents so many Black women that that have embraced me, and so yeah, and my gayness. That she represented my grandmother. She represented all my aunties. She represented my neighbors. Um, she she's just the Black woman that I know.
And speaking of first-time actors, as you mentioned, you've worked with first-time actors before, Gabourey Sidibe and
Yeah.
Precious being
Hmm.
a notable example. Is there like a freshness to the take to like a film or a character that you get from someone who is not like a veteran from the business that sort of gives you a different perspective?
Well, even with the veterans, they don't know what they're walking. When you get into the ring with me, you don't know what you're gonna expect. But I don't even know what I'm gonna expect. Because half the time I don't know what I'm doing. I really don't know what I'm doing, and I tell them I don't know what I'm doing. I think that's what's so. I don't pretend to have gone to film school. I didn't. I only work with the spirit. What the spirit is telling me to do in the moment, and I think that is what they respond to, what actors respond to, and which can seem to be, from a critic standpoint, messy. Like what is this messiness? Well, it's my art, and my actors understand it. But yeah, it is refreshing to work with first-time actors because they don't know what the rules are. And so you get performances like Andra's and or Gabby's because they completely render themselves to me, and we become one in trying to tell the story of whatever character that we're trying to portray.
And creating this performance with Anja Day, you're recreating a lot of Billie Holiday musical performances. Like, how is it recreating those? Did you refer to a lot of footage that you referenced, or were you kind of approaching it sort of in a fresh way to see these performances?
Right. I saw every documentary, every piece of anything that physically looked like Billy out, or it was Billy. And a lot of pictures really spoke to who Billy was in the moment. There were three different versions of Billy: her at her healthiest, her succumbing to drugs, and then her dying, what that death looked like, what that death look was like. And so and she was never the same, she was never the same. She didn't know how to sing the same way, the same song the same way ever. And what I was trying to get at with the film is like jazz. I tried to get into her spirit, so it wasn't really a conventional biopic in that, like your typical biopic. It was more like if you were high on heroin and you were seeing lynchings all the time, um, and you were part of that jazz world. So that's what the experience should be like for our viewer. Like, this is what it's like to see a lynching. This is what you had to do to anesthetize yourself to deal with the lynchings, all with jazz to soothe the soul. So that's sort of the experience I was trying to get at with in making the film.
And as you mentioned, the one of the most visually and emotionally kind of impactful scenes in the movie is this scene where Billie Holiday comes across the scene of a lynching, and it's kind of this one continuous motion, the scene, into a performance. And like, what were your thoughts going into shooting that scene, and how you wanted to present? It's almost like a surreal kind of experience of what is going through Billie Holiday's mind.
Again, I wanted you to feel like, what was it like? What would it have been like to see a lynching? Like, I've never seen one. And what would that, but I've seen death before. I've seen, I've had friends shot in front of me and died. I've had friends die in my arms of AIDS. So I know what death is, and I know that feeling. So I try to bring that to, and I know about going out and using drugs because of that, because of trying to forget that. So I wanted to get into Billie's head, and getting into I wanted you to feel what I felt when my friends were dying in my arms, and where I had to go to escape that. Of course, I don't have the vocal cords to sing Strange Fruit, which culminated in that. But yeah, it was done in one shot. She gets off the bus, and that was like, that I've never done that before. And it was very hard. I understand now what it's like to be on a soccer team, because everybody had to be in place. The kids had to be crying, and they really were crying just at watching the atrocity of that woman hanging from the tree. It was a real woman that was like propped up, and the man was crying, and the cross was burning, and all the actors had to be in place when she went into that labyrinth of what that shack was like, when she was feeling all those different emotions that ultimately led her to go out and have the courage to sing the song Strange Fruit. Hard, really hard. And I can check that off my bucket list again, because I don't think I'm gonna do that one again. Maybe I will.
And having worked on and made like Empire and Star, these shows about music, fictional shows about music, and did those sort of help inform your approach to telling the story about a real musician?
No, I didn't, because you would think so, but no, because this is a whole different experience. We pre-recorded. I thought that we were just going to do it like we do with Star, and with Empire, we did all of the pre-records. So that's what I did with Billie, not understanding that the songs took on a completely different meaning once we were in the moment. Lover Man took a completely different meaning on after, because the pre-record, she sang it a certain way. But once you see her beaten and kicked by her lover, Lover Man means another story. It's another story altogether and a different meaning. So though it was beautifully executed in the pre-record, it wasn't the same way once. So I drove the producers crazy by, saying, okay, we got to shoot this one live. And the same with Strange Fruit. Strange Fruit, after, we sang it in the pre-record, but once you sing it after seeing, the lynching, it takes a completely different meaning on. And Andrea completely she delivered it in a different way. So I learned that so much in pre-records. That's what I
learned. And on the sort of the other side of this story is also Jimmy Fletcher's story, played by Trevante Rhodes. There's so much internal conflict in that character, who is a federal agent, and yet he comes to understand how he's being used. Talk about casting Trevante Rhodes in that role, and sort of working with him on that kind of push and pull dynamic that he had.
Mm-hmm. I really was obsessed with him since Moonlight, and I was trying to find something. We were trying to figure out what we were going to do together, and Trevante brings a quiet elegance to Jimmy that very few actors, I think, are able to deliver, because he's a fink. He like rats her out. So how do you recover from that? And there, and on his journey, we see a Black man that's troubled. It reminded me of my dad, what the trouble that he felt, that he must have felt. It's still what I don't know what he did, what happened to them Move kids, but what that turmoil must have felt like. And though, and Jimmy just reminded me, Trevante played it like my dad. He reminded me a lot of my father when he did that. That's the first, no one's heard that before, but he reminded me of my dad, and how he felt. The character fell in love with Billy. I don't know that he was there at the end. I think that, we took creative license about him being there at the end of Billy's life. And also, I didn't know his mother. We couldn't find information out about his home life. So we created the mother character, which was fictional. But other than that, all the court records say that this is what happened with Jimmy. It was a hard character. That was a hard character to direct because, he sells her out. So how do you like this guy afterwards? And I think I did. I think I hope I always, that's the one part of the movie I don't know whether I really convinced that I nailed. I think I did though. I think.
I want to congratulate you on the film, your work on it. It's, as we're recording this, it will be released soon on Hulu. So everyone will get a chance to see it. And thank you so much for joining with me today to talk about it.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me.